a lot of people may or may not be familiar, but you're one of the most connected CEOs to Capitol Hill. What do you think are your view on the chances of, say, like a safe banking getting to the finish line and being rescheduled perhaps in 2024? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Hope you had a great weekend. New week. Looks like cannabis is still surging in the right direction, which is great to see. A lot of crazy stocks, accumulating so high over the last 5 to 7 trading days, including Cresco Labs up over 50%. As we want to welcome in the CEO of Cresco Labs, which trades on the CSC under the ticker symbol CL. Charlie Bachtell. Good to see you, sir. First time on the podcast, but it's great to finally meet you.
Yeah, no, glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Good to see you, Anthony Verrill. Hope you had a good weekend.
I did. Dolphins got the dub, and cannabis market is about as high as the game yesterday. So, it's looking nice.
Finished strong on Friday, and here we are segueing into the new week. So, Charlie, we'll begin with that. Nice to finally see a lot of interest level from investors. We have volatility, as I said, in a few other podcasts from the macro level, but it looks like cannabis is leading the way, and who would have thought of that? But nice to finally see that we've turned somewhat of a corner heading into the fall, don't you think?
It is. And more, as much as anything else, it's nice to know that the energy is here when we get some of these catalysts that we've been expecting for a while. So it's nice to know that the energy is still here for it.
For sure. Absolutely. What was your reaction when you heard the news, the HHS from a week and a half ago, recommending to the DEA to reschedule? A lot of executives are saying, well, duh, this is about time. But what was the honest reaction when you heard the news?
Yeah, I as happy as everybody who's listening to your podcast right now. It really is. I think the first domino. We'll look at this as the first domino in federal reform to fall. And while expected, I think just like everybody else, when it doesn't happen so many times, you get frustrated, you get concerned. The announcement was a little bit earlier than we were expecting. I think, there were rumors circulating that this was going to be the recommendation coming out of HHS for a bit, but didn't think that it was going to come out when it did, which was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I'm just a little surprised in how well it's reacted amongst the market. Like I knew there would be a little bit of resurgence for a couple of trading days, but we're now going on 2 weeks, and it looks like there's some real strong staying power. So a lot of people may or may not be familiar, but you're one of the most connected CEOs to Capitol Hill. What do you think are your view on the chances of, say, like a safe banking getting to the finish line and being rescheduled perhaps in 2024?
I think it's the way that it's shaping up is more likely than not. And I know that's kind of a half answer, but I think we're all okay with half answers at this point. You can't call legislation. The political sort of variable is too big. We've seen it now a couple of years in a row. That's why I really do like the HHS announcement and the rescheduling, because it's a little bit more insulated. It's not a piece of legislation. It doesn't need to go through the Senate and the House. It's administrative, it's regulatory. It does have political implications, which also, again, give me comfort. I think it's highly unlikely that HHS makes an announcement like that without there being agreement among the stakeholders involved there that it's a recommendation that can be supported. So I like the announcement a ton. As it relates to SAFE, I also like the way that the things that are within our control are shaping up. But with legislation, there's so many things that are outside of our control that you still have to be cautiously optimistic.
Well, that's encouraging, at least to hear. They don't make this decision unless there's ongoing conversations, like a bigger picture scenario.
Yeah. And again, not that there are those conversations happening. It's just the general understanding of how sort of the political implications of an announcement like this, I don't think are done haphazardly. I'd be shocked if they were. And then, a lot of people say, well, this isn't a political issue. This is based on science and it's based on data. But I think our subject matter in particular, this never should have been a Schedule 1 in the first place. We know that wasn't the science and the data that made it a Schedule 1. So I guess what was good, back in the 70s could also be good here.
We all know that in the industry, but do you think Capitol Hill is now understanding that?
I think so. Yeah, I do.
With these issues being federal, and obviously there's still a lot of conversations going on the state level. And 3 markets you guys are levered to: Florida, Ohio, and PA. They both have adult use conversion going through. The narratives are are going in each of those markets. I mean, do you see with, I guess, Ohio having the most momentum with Joyce coming on, PA, I think, took a little step back today, and then Florida's in the Supreme Court. I mean, is there any market in particular that you guys are focused on? Or you're just hoping that those dominoes drop as they do, and then you'll be the beneficiary of that moving forward?
Well, again, this is where I might set Florida aside because Kim is the lead in Florida, home state, and very appreciative of the effort, the lift that she's doing on behalf of the industry. But this is foundational for Cresco Labs. We're my philosophy coming into this, with my background being in a highly regulated banking industry before this on the legal side, when your industry is highly regulated, and also kind of an emerging style of industry where regulations are being formed, it would behoove you to engage at a very high level in that process. So we do this at a state level in every state that we're in. Feel good about Ohio, feel good about Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
The desire is there to do it in both of those states, even if there are things that still need to be ticked and tied. But I think both of those states look promising for, probably program launches. Ohio might be a little earlier just because of the definitive date associated with the ballot initiative. Mm-hmm. But I think by 2025, both of those states have adult use programs, which is really encouraging. Big states. But
I know that we're seeing a little progress out of New York. I mean, do you think that New York gets its act together and gets streamlined here soon and start to at least maybe be a 2024 story? Bet bear case 2025 for the operators that took the time to build out footprints in that state?
I honestly, honest answer, I don't know. I don't know. There's so much that needs to be figured out in New York, and there's entrenched positions, and they are so far apart, more so than any other state that I've seen.
I think we got a number. What was it? 1,300 illegal dispensaries in New York right now.
In Manhattan.
Manhattan. And that would be down from 1,400 plus from 3-4 months ago.
That's wow. Where do you even start? It's like you've crossed a line that you can't return from. But
I mean, you got to start at the landlords somewhat. I mean, the landlords are responsible for having illegal businesses operating. And from what I've been reading, that's where they're going to start, because those guys will act very quickly. In regard to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're not making $1,000 a day as the landlord. And so those fines will be imposing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we look at this, like I said, positive sentiment. The things this will do for companies like yourself, like, the tier 1 MSOs, 280E goes away. These companies suddenly become profitable overnight. That's got to be a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of discussion, but, if that were to be implemented, what's this say about the industry? As much as it's growing and a lot of people are in favor of legalizing cannabis. But at the end of the day, before we even get into the federal legalization talk, the first steps is like getting rid of 280E. What does this do for your company and for the overall industry?
It's huge. And it's, your audience is more educated than any, honestly. Your audience is probably, you're talking to the most educated, engaged cannabis stakeholders outside of operators. Once you go beyond this group, though, nobody knows anything about this, right?
You're right.
I said this before. It's like it's even hard to comprehend what pressure 280E puts on businesses, because nobody can fathom a scenario where a business isn't allowed to deduct their business expenses. So I think it really can't be overstated, the importance, both from a P&L standpoint and economics of it, but just from a normalization standpoint too of cannabis. It allows us to sort of have a greater move towards a traditional business, and that includes the cash flow associated with a pretty dramatic savings from this punitive tax structure that we've been operating with so far. So it's huge. I also think, again, any incremental moves towards a cannabis looking and feeling like a traditional industry will have ripple effects that not only go into the investor community, but as you're looking at it from the perspective of the U.S. exchanges. Not that this does anything specifically as it relates to the U.S. exchanges, but there's also nothing specifically that prohibits U.S. exchanges from listing U.S. operators today.
Yeah.
So the more of these sort of these things that you can just, these incremental improvements that you could stack on top of each other, whether it's a safe, base safe as drafted currently, or safe with some improved language. You get 280E relief through a rescheduling. It's no longer a Schedule 1 substance. And then if there is a policy memo position issued by the DOJ, you start stacking those things on top of each other, and cannabis could start to look and feel very normal quickly.
Which I think is
I know
going
that
to
you
be great.
guys. I know that you guys are a major wholesaler in a lot of like really keystone markets in the states, and that's been part of the Cresco business model and narrative. I mean, do you think any of these regulatory shifts bring any conversation around interstate commerce, or do you think we're a ways away from that?
I think we're a ways away from it. I do. I think the how, right? When you start talking about that federal reform that impacts how the industry operates,
Yeah,
it's safe. It doesn't really get into the question of how. It's pretty binary, right? Should cannabis have access to banking or not? That's kind of what's being addressed in safe. Any of the other pieces of legislation that get into how to legalize or how to structure the industry, you're going to layer on a ton of additional complexity and variety of perspectives that again kind of get out to the polar extremes on both sides. So, and then you're going to have the stakeholders that are the states, these
yeah,
governors that have developed these programs that they
Yeah.
like. They like the structure, they like the businesses, they like the employment, they like the tax revenue. All of that gets into that conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to talk about Columbia Care. When this announcement was made, it looked like a great idea. Obviously, current market conditions dragged this out. I think a lot of retail investors were uncertain, which probably brought the stock down over time because there was uncertainty. However, maybe sometimes the best deal made is not making a deal. But if we look at Safe or Schedule 3 becoming a reality in the industry, do you envision looking for a big ticket acquisition again, similar to like what you were potentially trying to close with Columbia Care?
I wouldn't rule out anything. We're observant, we're opportunistic. I think Columbia Care, though, that the effort, and sort of the hoops that we had to jump through with that transaction, they do shine a light on the complexity associated with a deal that big, and the divestiture of assets, and especially with the volatility of this industry. Now,
Hmm.
let's assume if there's a rescheduling, and then there's some sort of legislation like SAFE that passes, maybe some of the volatility gets removed from this industry. I think that's critical if you're going to do a transformative M&A deal, just because of the time that a transformative M&A deal takes. You got to absorb a lot of potential volatility during that stretch of time. So we don't rule anything out, but I think it's more likely that incremental growth initiatives through tuck-ins and other, maybe capital light, asset light approaches to getting into markets that we want to be in
Yeah.
start to be more real than big transformative transactions.
Is it fair to say what I said? Sometimes the best deals are no deals made at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
yeah. With these regulations, I mean, I know we're starting to see Instagram, Twitter allow cannabis advertising. I mean, you guys obviously had the Spotify announcement last week. I mean, what can you guys walk us through, like how that happened, how that came to be, and like what led to it? I mean, when I read it, I mean, it's awesome. Like tip of the spear, educating. I'm assuming there's a lot of geolocating going around, driving those people to the point of sale. And I mean, it looks like pretty revolutionary from a marketing standpoint in cannabis.
Yeah, all credit to the team associated with that, both the retail team and the marketing team, for putting it together. I think it's something that we've wanted to do for a long time, right? Like traditional CPG and these vehicles, these online social platforms have shown their value in the regular world,
Yeah.
Yeah.
being able to reach your consumer in a super targeted, very articulate way. And so it's something that we've always wanted to do. We'll see. It's a test and learn type approach, and we'll see if it bears the fruit that we expect it to. But yeah, no, credit to the team for putting it together and getting there first.
Yeah. Media landscape has changed drastically. I know it better than anyone because it's like we've had conversations with some pretty influential people that are on television shows, and the audience size on ABC across the country is 200,000, and then
Mhm.
if you focus on one thing and do it well, it's why you have to really circulate and like, captivate an audience and, focus, like I said, on one piece of content that people understand and know what they're expecting each time they log online. But like you said, there's still a lot of question marks on how this all unfolds with the online world and what works and what doesn't, right?
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I would also, I'm intrigued to go to start seeing the data and start seeing the conversions, because I would be willing to bet you could extrapolate a pretty strong consumer profile for a cannabis consumer based on their music interests.
Yeah,
Agreed.
It's the right spot and the right platform to be going after a consumer from an advertising perspective.
Sorry, I got to plug in real quick, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
No problem.
But yeah, that actually makes a good point.
Yeah.
But so how exactly does that work basically with Spotify, with cannabis and music? How's it going to work?
With the advertisements?
Yeah.
Again, just like other social platforms, that geo-targeting is a huge part of it. And I think it's part of the not subscription, the free service, where you're going to have those advertisements presented to the consumer. So again, it's an interesting vehicle and totally going to be data driven. And we'll see if it works. You
think one day we see 30-second, 60-second ads during the Super Bowl, cannabis related?
Haven't we already had?
We tried. Yeah. We tried. Good PR stunt by Howard and the crew over at Acreage back in the day. Yeah. Got some attention, but I like to think, we will see that eventually one day. Maybe it's cannabis beverages. Maybe that's the first step, but it'll be a good day for the industry when that day does come.
Totally agree. And again, you're seeing it already with as the leagues start to change their positions on it. And also not only as it relates to consumption, but the advertising abilities, the CBD with MLB last year. So to your point, it's headed in the direction.
Yeah. What would you say outside of all this speculation that we're talking about right now, if you're in front of a group of investors, what excites you the most about this company as we close out 2023 heading into 2024?
Really what I like, and again, credit to the team for making it happen, is the ability to optimize and rationalize over the last 18 months, big focus of ours, to make sure that we're as competitive as we can be. And so we're competing well in the states that we're really focused on.
Yeah.
And we continue to have number one market share in Illinois, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, big markets. It shows that consumers like our brands. So the execution on the operation side and reaching that consumer is really good. And then to see the margin improvement over the last couple quarters with more expectations of that going forward, just show that we can operate a good company in choppy, tough waters.
Mm-hmm.
So really excited what can happen when we get a little more wind in the sails too. Look forward to it.
Everyone's gotten a lot better at their jobs, I think, in the last 12 to 18 months, because we've really had to roll up their sleeves. But, as they say, hard times make hard men, or should say hard men and hard women. My apologies for that. But I think the industry needed an opportunity to have some adversity for growth. But I think it's, if you can somehow, some way, maybe get some help that are out of your hands, meaning Washington, that when you least expect it, it's probably going to go a long ways, and you'll see a lot of growth come to fruition on what a lot of these companies have done over the past 12 months. Don't you think?
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, listen, sorry to hear about your Bears yesterday. I know you're from Chicago. Tough loss, but I was a little disappointed. I thought, Justin Fields in a lot of fantasy drafts, and I was thinking there'd be a better turnout than that. But did you watch the game and were you probably disappointed?
I did. And yes, it was just, I expected more. We looked unprepared.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable.
Only 1 week though. But listen, I hope to see you in a couple of weeks at the Benzinga conference in Chicago, but I appreciate the time. Thanks for the update on some of the feedback that you've heard. Stock's performing well. Like I said, up over 50% the last 5 trading days. And let's see where this goes heading deeper into the fall.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you in Chicago soon.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
What's up, everyone? So what'd you think of the interview? Are there any more questions you want us to ask that you want to learn more of? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like button, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.